Inside the 12 continues. The quarterback, Taylor McGuire. I'm Pete Souza. It's time to play for keeps. I mean, again, I mentioned it before. We're almost to Thanksgiving. The college football rankings, the second edition, comes out earlier this week. Let's take a look at some of those rankings right now. And you see the Big 12 is right there. Texas Tech at 6.
I still think there's a path for BYU and Utah to play their way in, one or the other likely as an at-large. They need help up ahead of them from teams like Notre Dame, Texas, and Oklahoma. And I thought it was big for the league that Cincinnati slides in there at the 25 spot. Obviously, the showdown coming up next week for BYU against Cincinnati. And I think it also, same as the initial rankings when it came out a week ago, I think it still speaks to the health of the league and the respect that the committee has for the Big 12, that you've got 3 teams ahead of any representative for the ACC. And when we think about trying to get an at-large bid for the Big 12, that's what this is going to come down to. Because obviously we know about the SEC and the Big 10. We know about the conference champions. But when you think about for the Big 12 compared to directly against the ACC, you're trying to see, is there one of these leagues that's going to be able to get a second team in? ACC right now, it looks like that's not going to be the case. Like they're just going to have their conference champion in. For the Big 12, Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, those are the teams that I think still standing there at the top. And then Cincinnati with the outside shot where they would need to win the league in order to get in.
Cincinnati at 25 is criminal. We don't have time for me to get into that. It's not necessary. You don't want to hear me go on and on. I will say one of the signature wins for West Virginia this year has a lot to do when we look at those rankings. They beat up on Pitt early in the year. Pitt's ranked 22nd in the country. I mean, that I think is an indication of really where we're at as far as the health of both of those conferences.
There's no doubt. And I think you're seeing down the stretch, you talk about that West Virginia win over Houston. That's what, if you're the Big 12, if you're a fan of the league as a whole, you're hoping that there's not anarchy and chaos that's introduced down the stretch where there's another win or an upset like that. We just talked about with a TCU, for example, going to BYU this week. If there's an upset like that in the league down the stretch, I think that's where you see this league play their way into just having one team in. Still a lot of football left to be played, but for the Big 12 to get more than one team in, those 3 teams that we talked about at the top between BYU, Utah, and Texas Tech, they need to continue to win out in some way, shape, or form in order for it to be a multi-bid league.
And the chaos will ensue. Texas and Oklahoma still with a lot left to do and a heavy-duty schedule. Speaking of heavy-duty, Joey McGuire breaking out the hardware after his victory against BYU. Talking a little bit, this must have been right after he gave his Jacob Rodriguez for Heisman push. But check this out. This is Coach McGuire on independence and how BYU is no longer an independent.
I was really excited whenever they joined the Big 12 because I think that they carry a lot of weight and a lot of respect. I think that I have a lot of respect for them entering a conference and not playing an independent schedule like other people. Y'all already know who that is. And so I have a lot of respect for that. I mean, they're earning their right just like everybody but a couple of people in the nation are earning their right through conference play, and playing in some really tough places.
That's our guy, Coach McGuire, basically talking about Notre Dame, saying, hey, the buffet table of as far as the schedule is concerned is over, join a conference. And unfortunately for the Big 12, BYU fell 5 spots behind that independent Notre Dame after Coach McGuire gave that speech.
I think for BYU, and you're exactly right, and I agree with Coach, like a lot of people do, I think for BYU, you should be encouraged that there's a data point last year with SMU where if they were to win out and there's a rematch against Texas Tech, if that's a close loss, and let's assume, again, for BYU fans, I'm not saying you lose to Texas Tech, but if they were to, and it's a 1-score loss, you've got a data point with SMU from a year ago where they can play their way in and still get an at-large bid because the committee's not going to punish them for playing in a championship game where Notre Dame right now, if they were to win out and they were to beat Pitt this weekend, they're taking up an at-large spot. But for BYU fans, I don't think they would be punished if they were to win out and then play Texas Tech in the conference championship game. And I think sliding back 5 spots, I think that was about the right spot. Again, I was curious to see would they be ahead of all of the ACC teams, and they were because, again, the Big 12 benefiting from the chaos in the ACC where you have Virginia lose a week ago and Louisville lose a week ago, and you see them slide down in the rankings. And for BYU to stay ahead of every team in the ACC, I think that's incredibly important for the league.
I appreciate Notre Dame, touchdown Jesus and all that stuff, but like the Knute Rockne push that they continue to receive every year, a little concerning for this guy right here. All right, let's take a look at the college football playoff bracket if it were to start today. What do you like about this, Taylor?
I think for Texas Tech, if they were to win out, I think you'd see them actually slide up a little higher in the rankings. I actually think they would be ahead of where they're at right now. I think it's very important. If you can get to that 5 spot, then you're playing the representative likely from the group of 5. And to me, if you win this league, and for Texas Tech, if their only loss were to have been with their backup quarterback, I think they would be deserving of that 5 spot. And then again, if it were to hold as it stands right now, you would see BYU in. I think we'll see that play out down the stretch. Does Utah have a chance to move up? But to me right now, if the league were to get 2 teams in, that's been the focus going all the way back to our first conversation with Brett Yormark back in August. That was an emphasis for the league. They wanted to try to get more than 1 team in. It would be great for the health of the Big 12 if that were to end up being the case.
And maybe 3 with Utah. No team is built to play football in November and December like the Utes. Great, big up front offensively, flying around on D, Kyle Whittingham's calling card. We'll see what happens.